What's up YouTube, and welcome to my pickups video for the month of October 2023. I did a lot of travel this month, especially at the beginning of the month. I was gone for what it felt like at least 2 weeks of the month already, and really it was a stack of personal trips and work trips all combined that went nonstop. So started off early in the month going to Salt Lake City for a concert, and I hadn't been to that city in 20 plus years actually, so it was really cool to see kind of the progress. It's growing very fast, and honestly there are a lot of retro video game stores in town, which was very cool. Got to hit a few over the weekend, and I got some pickups from those. I followed that up immediately by a trip to Denver for work, and was so busy on that trip I didn't get to game hunt yet again. So I'm hoping my next trip out there I will get some time to look around, because there's a lot of great game stores in that area. And then I followed that trip immediately by going back to Portland for the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So I'll show you some pickups that came from that as well. And just kind of give you my thoughts on the con this year. I think overall the con was planned out a lot better as far as the spacing. You know, I think of on the Saturday when the bulk of the crowds are there, there were some real crush pain points in the crowd before where it was really hard to get around or uncomfortable. And I think they did a much nicer job of spacing out all the tables this year. As far as the merchandise on sale, it felt like less video games than ever, because I think just supplies are just getting very low, and more video game ephemera and memorabilia type stuff than ever. So really you're seeing that shift in the market where less people are actually selling their collections and more people are just selling video game related things or repros or stuff like that, or modern games, things like that. What I will say though is there's a lot of very high-end stuff there as always. There was a Stadium Events there for sale, which is the last game I need for my NES collection, but I was not spending $28,000 on it, or at least not on an impulse like that. So came home empty-handed with that, but you will see quite a few other things I got from the con, and honestly from some of the other cities that I visited too. So first thing I'm going to show you, I'm going to go ahead and call this a pickup because it's something that was a long way in the works. And that is further enhancements to my Sega Game Gear. This was my blue Game Gear, which is kind of the uncommon color that I've had for many years. And ultimately it did the classic screen failure where it needed new capacitors. So earlier this year I replaced the capacitors. I think I might have mentioned it in a prior video, and got the thing back to life with the factory screen. But ultimately was unsatisfied with it because now there's these modern IPS screens, which is what has now been installed. I did order the kit to do the bin-vin kit for the IPS upgrade, and ultimately I had a lot of trouble with it. I'm pretty familiar with soldering video game projects, but ultimately I screwed some stuff up. So shout out to Navy Vet 2015 on Discord, who was able to take a look at my progress, fix all the things I didn't do right, and ultimately get my system back up and running with the new screen. And it is beautiful. So I've been playing a lot of Sega Game Gear this month. Ultimately, I have a really good Sega Game Gear collection. There's not a whole lot of things I'm looking for, except now I'm kind of starting to eye some of the Japanese imports that we never got, and even some of the Euro imports. So, you may see some more Game Gear games coming into my collection soon, but I thought I would show this because it just looks so great with the new bright screen. I also put in the new amplified soundboard, so actually it has a little bit better sound quality as well. I don't have it turned up right now, but ultimately just another thing that really improved the output of the Sega Game Gear. And then it still runs on the 6 AA batteries. You can do battery pack mods, but I've heard this new screen takes so much less energy to run that you actually should get some decent battery life out of the batteries now for the first time ever. So that's another nice upgrade with this. But very happy with this. The Sega Game Gear is like a notoriously hard system to play on a TV because of the screen resolution being so funky, and really only the Retron adapter is the only thing that's commercially come out to be able to enable it. So honestly, until that happens or somebody comes up with a better solution, I think fixing one of the actual portable systems and playing as it was intended on a modern screen is your best bet. But very happy with this, and I thought I would mention that just to kick off. So we'll talk about some console games first. Ultimately, there weren't a ton of console games, but I got a lot of portable games and accessories this month. So first thing I want to mention is a store that I went to on the Salt Lake City trip, which was Minus World Video Games. It's in Layton, Utah, which is 20 miles north of Salt Lake City. Excellent selection, very deep import selection, just really impressed with that store. They had a lot of Sega Master System stuff. I didn't end up buying any, but there was a lot of cool stuff there for anybody that's looking for that. But I did get some Sega stuff on that trip. So one thing I got was Night Striker for the Mega CD, or Japanese Sega CD. Very much a part of my Taito collection is why I wanted this. I already have the enhanced version of Night Striker for the Japanese PS1, and then it also came out for the Japanese Saturn. So there's lots of like single disc versions of this game that came out of the arcade game. But this one I thought was neat because it does have the original Zentada soundtrack with Red Book audio. However, much like Ninja Warriors, also on the Japanese Mega CD, Taito went to some like extreme region locking on these discs, and I don't know how they did it because I have a way to switch my US system BIOS to a Japanese BIOS to load these games, and all of my other Japanese Mega CD games work right except for these two. So this one will actually load, you get the full sound, you can hear the menu music, but no picture whatsoever. And then Ninja Warriors does something similar where you can get to the menu screen, you can see all that, but when you actually go to enter the game, it just blanks out on you. You can't view it. So nothing's wrong with the discs, it's just ultimately due to the region locking. So I do have a Japanese Mega Drive, but I guess maybe I'll have to get a Japanese Mega CD system to be able to play this properly. But happy to have it in the collection nonetheless, and I do like Night Striker. It's an interesting future racing arcade game from the 80s that not really a whole lot of people talk about with a great soundtrack. One thing I did get also this month was quite a few TurboGrafx games and Turbo Duo games, so I was very happy to find these. I always like getting just weird stuff for these systems that I don't have. First one of these is nothing super uncommon, but it's just one that was a hole in my collection, which is Space Harrier. This was one I got at the con, and ultimately not the best way to play Space Harrier. The Japanese Saturn version on the Sega Ages collection is probably the most definitive version of this game. But for, an early home version, I guess it's passable. Just, you don't expect a whole lot in the special effects department. The music's kind of cool. It does have like kind of a PC Engine remix to the sound that matches the console. And I thought that was kind of notable compared, but overall not something I'm going to play a whole lot. Just another nice game to get for the TurboGrafx chip. The other two games I got are CD games, and these are ones that weren't really super high on my priority list, but also since I found them out in the wild and at the con, I figured might as well. So first one of these is actually from that store in Utah, and that is Shadow of the Beast. Definitely a popular game in Europe. This was a European developed game by Psygnosis, and honestly pretty rough to play. The scrolling is very janky, and the enemy respawns are very unfair in my opinion. But it does have a fantastic soundtrack, and I think the vision for this game honestly was probably pretty solid. It's just the execution of it doesn't really hold up so much today. You can get Shadow of the Beast on many different consoles, obviously all your European ZX Spectrums and all that kind of stuff as well. Sega Genesis, it came out for that in the US also, but I do think that this PC Engine or TurboGrafx Turbo Duo version probably has one of the better soundtracks since you have that nice CD quality audio. So cool to have this in the collection. Not a Turbo game you see a whole lot. It does have very cool artwork on the cover as well. Just unfortunately as a game it doesn't hold up so well. And then the last thing I got for Turbo CD is, or Super CD, is Prince of Persia. Another game with a million different ports out there. I won't even begin to list all the systems that Prince of Persia came out with, computer and console. But this one was kind of interesting as a home version because Hudson Soft, or at least one of their subsidiaries, developed this in Japan for the console specifically. So it wasn't necessarily just a repaint from a computer version that they moved over. They actually tried to optimize it for the console. Once again, the soundtrack to this really good. Like, they did a nice job with that. The gameplay of this has never really been my forte. Even back in the day, I didn't really care for Prince of Persia, but I think if you're going to play this on a console for one of the earlier systems, probably could do, it's one of the better systems to try it on. So, neat to get this as well. I like the artwork on this one too. Kind of has a little bit different cover than even like the Sega CD version of the game, so kind of nice to have that also. Another game I got at that store in Utah, I just keep mentioning that because they had so many cool like import and oddball games, is one that I've always wanted to have, but now it's put me in the quandary of now I need to buy another game system. So this is Girls Garden by Yu Suzuki. It was actually his first game, believe it or not, for the SG-1000. And really interesting concept to this, a little bit misogynistic if you want to be honest, but basically you are playing the girl character gathering flowers for your somewhat disinterested boy crush, and ultimately dodging bears and bees in your quest to do so. And then he kind of just runs off to another girl anyway at the end of each stage, and then you have to try to win him back at the next level by gathering more flowers. So kind of an unusual tale, but looks very captivating to play. I obviously don't have a way to play it yet because I don't have the system. I'm actually looking at maybe getting a Japanese Sega Master System, because then I would be able to play SG-1000 games and Japanese Master System games and SG... what's the other system? I don't know, the other one that came in between those that I'm getting confused on. I think that's kind of the jack-of-all-trades way to play these, and so you may see a new console coming in the near future. But for now, very happy to have this. It's a very good condition copy, had the manual and everything in there as well, of course. But very happy to get this, and I got it at a much better price at that store than I would have online, so kind of facilitated the impulse purchase. The other games I'm going to show are all portable games, and these were all three from the Portland Con. So the Portland Con, honestly, I just ended up focusing on portable systems more than anything else. This was one that's been on my want list for a long time as far as imports, and ultimately one of the vendors had it at the con. I made a deal late in the day on Sunday, and I was very happy to get this game in person. This is known as Samurai Kid for the Game Boy Color, and very regrettable that we didn't get this game in the US. I think it would have stood out amongst the Game Boy Color library because it's very clever. It is kind of an action platformer type game, but it's a little bit more than that. It's more of an action puzzle solving game to be able to clear each of the stages. The pace of the game is not super fast or anything like that, and ultimately you have a variety of weapons and attacks that you have to flip between on the fly to be able to unlock some of the puzzles and obstacles that come across as you're going through the game. It's a very rewarding gameplay. What's kind of surprising is it was published by Koei, and not at all like any of the other Koei stuff that's very, historical, other than it is samurai period. Maybe that's why they were interested in publishing. But it was actually a small company called Biox that developed this game, and I'd love to find some of the other stuff they worked on, maybe even under a different company name, because it's a very unique game. I do think a fan translation exists of this now. It does have quite a bit of text, but it's honestly not that intrusive. So far I've been able to navigate through, and having a lot of fun actually playing this through the GameCube Game Boy adapter. So just playing on TV for the most part right now. But it is kind of an expensive game. You can get it card only, obviously, for a little bit less, but finding it complete at the con, I couldn't pass this up. So very happy to get this in my Game Boy collection. Another portable game I got, obviously one of my main things I was after at the Portland Con was the final two Neo Geo Pocket Color games that have really been a thorn in my side to finishing my complete Neo Geo Pocket Color US collection. I didn't find them, not at any price, nobody had them. There was some Neo Geo Pocket Color stuff there this year, a little bit more so probably than the last couple years. But I did end up buying an import game for the system just so I had something new to add to that collection, and I got Dynamite Slugger by 80K. Kind of interesting release. This was a second baseball game that came out for the system after Baseball Stars. Baseball Stars did come out in the US, Baseball Stars Pocket I think it's officially called. And this was actually intended to come to the US. There is rumors, or maybe even truth, to a ESRB branded cartridge being found somewhere, like a single person has it. And I know it was on release lists, but ultimately due to the system getting canceled in the US, this never got released here. I think this Japanese version is in full English. I haven't had a chance to pop this in yet in my Neo Geo Pocket, but I'm looking forward to playing it, because it actually got reviewed by some of the magazines as pretty good. It's a little bit different than Baseball Stars, but I think it's supposed to be a pretty solid baseball game for a Neo Geo Pocket release. So very happy to have this. It's an 80K developed game, and I really like a lot of the 80K stuff that they did in conjunction with SNK over the years. Kind of confusing, very similar company names, but unrelated companies. Probably the highlight of my Portland Con, this was my big purchase, a couple other actually bigger purchases as well, but this was the big one, and I kind of hem-hawed about this. I talked to the seller on Saturday, asked how negotiable he was, kind of got a little feel for it, and then I went back on Sunday, made an offer, and ultimately we came to a deal. But this was something that I've really been wanting for a while to have complete in the box, and that is Ninja Gaiden Shadow for the original Game Boy. I love the original Ninja Gaiden series. I've been probably preaching it in my videos for years, how much I'm a big fan of the NES games in particular. But I've always liked this game as well because it was developed by Natsume, not Tecmo, and it was intended to be part of the Shadow of the Ninja series, which I also like that series too. And so it has some similarity to Ninja Gaiden gameplay, but what I'll say is it plays a little bit more slow-paced and methodical, probably intentionally to work with the limitations of the Game Boy hardware. And then you have things like grappling and things like that that didn't necessarily fit in with the normal Ninja Gaiden series. So it has kind of its own flavor due to that. Kind of neat that this was released as a Ninja Gaiden series game. The cover art obviously recycled from the original NES game, so that's not the coolest part about it. but very happy to have this in my Ninja Gaiden collection. So I had a cart and manual of this that I was eventually hoping to just find a box for, and then ultimately found this one complete at the show, decided to grab this, and I'll sell off my extra copy. So very cool series, of course, and very happy to have that in my original Game Boy collection. So that is actually all the games I got, but I'm going to go over quite a bit of other gaming-related stuff I got this month. I went down a rabbit hole of buying link cables this month, and I don't really know what prompted all this, but I bought a bunch of system link cables that I didn't have already, and I already have some plans to buy more. So now I'm kind of thinking like, maybe you guys would be interested in seeing a video about system link cables, some of their capabilities, some of the things that systems that did it better than others, some that actually had really good support, and some that ultimately did not. But the first one of these I'm going to show you is one that I bought online. I didn't get this one boxed, but this is the Sega Game Gear link cable. And now that I have a working Sega Game Gear, I have another Sega Game Gear that I need to repair, and this actually might get me motivated to fix that one, so that I can actually test out the link mode in this. The downside to this and many of these other link cables is they typically require 2 systems. If it's a console, you need 2 televisions, and you need 2 copies of the same game, which can get kind of prohibitively expensive on some of these. So nice to at least get the cable piece because you only need 1 of these, but you basically need 2 of everything else for the older systems. For some reason, the Sega Game Gear one wasn't really all that popular. The Game Boy link cables, everyone had those because you could do all this stuff with Pokemon, obviously. But the Game Gear one was supported well, it just didn't really seem to sell that well. One of the other link cables I did have prior to this, but I upgraded to a boxed one, is the Geo Pocket link cable. This works with the black and white and colored ones. This is the Japanese box for it, but I found it at one of the other stores in Utah, and it was a great price, so I figured might as well go ahead and upgrade my link cable for that. Actually, I'd like to have the US version of this in the box, because I think I'm going for all the Geo Pocket Color US accessories, at least the official ones, for my collection as well. So maybe I'll upgrade that someday, but for now, it's a nice placeholder. Another thing that I upgraded was the PS1 link cable, and this is the, again, Japanese version of it as well as far as the box. The cable is the same, US and Japanese. I just had a loose cable before, so I figured might as well also have this one in the box. There is a US packaging for this too that would be kind of neat to have, but I thought the Japanese box was kind of neat, just this little like cardboard looking thing, and plain but effective and a very small, packaging. PS1 actually supported this pretty well with software. It's actually the hardware that you have to worry about using it because it doesn't work with the PSONE, the small model, and you have to have 2 of the original fat PS1s to be able to link together, and you can't do PS2s to link PS1 cables either. So kind of some odd limitations as far as using this one, but it's neat to have as well. So let's get to the most exciting of these, or at least probably the most obscure. There was a Dreamcast link cable, and many people probably don't know that as far as a system link cable for that system because it only came out in Japan. So this is the official Sega Dreamcast Taisen cable, as it's known, to link 2 Sega Dreamcast cable systems together. Very expensive and hard to find. I found it at the Portland Con. Again, kind of had to negotiate a deal on it, but I did get a better price than I would find this online. Very unusual to find with the original packaging in as well, too, so I figured you might as well go for it. This one is very limited as far as what it supports, and as far as US games, I think there's only 2. It does work with Virtual On, and it works with Ferrari F355 Challenge, which I think would be really cool to play with 2 consoles, because I do really love that F355 game. But this is a very obscure piece of Sega hardware, and very happy to have this, and then now it's got me kind of looking at other oddball link cables, so if my link cable rabbit hole interests you, please let me know in the comments, and maybe I will make a further video with some more detail on the link cables, as well as my insanity of then starting to link some of these actual things up through a television. So we'll see where that goes. Next cable I got is much less exciting. This is just an extension cable for the Neo Geo CD. It also works with the AES. I needed a second one for my second controller, so just something else I picked up real cheap. We'll go into another controller. This was another Portland Con find. Not really something I was actively seeking out, but I like collecting janky NES controllers from third parties. And this is one of the best ones as far as I'm concerned, as far as being a curiosity. This is the Bandai Mega, and it has an actual LCD screen to program your moves into. Kind of an awkward, big square box feel to it. And then unfortunately, because it has that screen installed, it takes batteries. You have to run batteries through it. I think it takes like 3 AAAs or 4 or something like that just to power this little bitty screen on it. So probably not something I'm going to use a whole lot. It, you know, goes for like 20 bucks online, and I was looking at it at some con seller's booth, kind of just joking about it, like I really didn't want to buy it. He's like, do you want that thing for $3? And I'm like, yes, I do. So, nice job, seller, in getting me to impulse buy that. But now I have another thing to add to my NES jank controller collection. Like I said, there was a ton of video game ephemera at the con, and I'm sure you'll see lots of videos about it from other YouTube users. I don't like buying that much of that stuff, but one thing did catch my eye was this one booth that sold a lot of collector pins, and a lot of just really neat designs from random video games and computer games over the years. The vendor's name was Canvas Quest. I think they're online as well. But they had a Mappy pin that was definitely calling my name. I'm a huge fan of anything to do with Mappy. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this, but I would love it, and very much happy to have this in the collection as well. Let's talk manuals. So, as you know, I love collecting loose manuals to start working on my NES collection, as well as some of my other systems as well. I like going to cons, especially for getting manuals, because I don't have to pay shipping, and I can also pick up quite a few at one time. So I got a lot of these at the con, and also some of the video game stores that I ran around to, because several of them were selling loose manuals as well. So we'll start off with NES. I got Puzzle. This is one of the unlicensed games. It's just a stupid slide puzzle game. Not great condition, but whatever, just something I needed. One manual I had is for Orb 3D, but why I wanted this, because it was bundled with something that I didn't even know existed. I probably should have just picked up on it from the name of the game, but because it is 3D, the game originally came with its own bespoke 3D glasses. And I know that because they say Orb 3D on them. So, in all my years of owning, some of the 3D releases like Rad Racer that came with 3D glasses, I had no idea that there was this release that came with its own 3D glasses too. So, very cool to get those. I don't know how many of those still exist, but I'm going to put that with the game. I thought that was cool. Next up is Great Waldo Search. Nothing too exciting there. We have The Last Starfighter. Very boring looking manual. Mystery Quest. This one is for the original DuckTales. I had this manual, but I knew mine at home wasn't in great shape, and this one was really nice condition, so I grabbed this while I was out in Utah. And then I got one more unlicensed game. This one has kind of cool art. This is MiG-29 Soviet Fighter. It's one of the Codemasters games. Happy to get that. I got some Game Boy manuals, so we'll start off with the Game Boy Color manual for Chase HQ Secret Police. I got the cartridge for that, just didn't have the manual. And then I got quite a few for original Game Boys. So I got the Game Boy version of Buster Brothers, which is a series I've always liked. I got Best of the Best Karate. Fighting Simulator 2-in-1, which includes Flying Warriors. And then we have Power Mission. Some kind of obscure titles here. And the Game Boy version of Chuck Rock, which is actually not a very common game. You see this on some of the other systems it came for, but Game Boy, not so much. I got one Game Gear manual for Battletoads, which actually I recently just got the cartridge on that one. I was kind of late to picking that version up. And then through eBay, I got another manual for the original NES top loader. I have 2 boxed top loader systems, but I was missing the manual for at least one of them, maybe both of them. So this is nice to have just to complete one of my top loader systems. Last up, and I know it's getting to be quite a few things here, is magazines. So first off, I'll talk about a hint book I found. Again, impulse purchase, didn't know this existed, found this in Utah. This is the official FCI hint book for Exodus Ultima. Not a game that I'm really crazy about, but I had no idea that they made these detailed hint books for like something this early on NES. And what I particularly wanted to buy this for is it had some super cool artwork inside of it. So while I'm not really a big fan of this game, I thought some of the art was particularly neat. So decided to go ahead and grab this while I was out there. I think they actually made hint books for the other 2 Ultima games on NES, but I don't have those obviously yet, so that might send me down a looking rabbit hole for those as well. Next up, we'll talk about magazines. I also like to find magazines in the wild. There were not a lot of magazines at the con this year, at least less so than I've seen in the past, but also I've noticed the prices of them have shot way up, and that's true online too, but it just seems like a lot of people are collecting magazines now, and the prices are definitely getting a lot higher. So, first one of these was an issue of Video Games and Computer Entertainment. I've talked about this magazine before. I'm not a huge fan of it. They're a little bit dry to read. But this one was kind of interesting because it was when the 3DO was first coming out, and they did a huge preview on 3DO stuff. There was also some TurboGrafx games in this one, so that was kind of interesting to see. But ultimately, they covered a lot of PC games in this magazine, and that was one of the things that doesn't really interest me. I have no nostalgia for vintage PC, unfortunately. I did get some Game Pros, and I've also said I'm not really a huge Game Pro fan, but ultimately these were a good price, so I decided to go for it. I actually thought I might have this issue, but I took a chance and grabbed it because it was so cheap. This is the Donkey Kong Country issue for Part 1 on December 94. And this was one of my favorite eras of EGM and GamePro because there were so many systems that were on the market around this era. Like, all your 16-bit stuff was still kind of peaking, 32-bit was starting to come out, you had all these, like, oddball CD systems and edutainment systems, and they were covering it all. And as a result of that, due to all the advertising, too, these issues are like the size of a phone book. I mean, they were crazy thick. So, very neat issue to have. The EGM of this era is probably even bigger, actually. And then right after that, I got the January 95 issue, which is for Earthworm Jim. Still very thick, not quite as thick as that one, but still a ton of releases were covered in this. And then I skipped a couple years, and I got 2 issues from 97. I thought this was really neat that these 2 issues came back to back. It just really shows like how powerful the PS1 was during that era. But I got the Castlevania Symphony of the Night issue, which love that game. Obviously, just the cover's not really my favorite. It's a little busy. And then I also got, right after that one, the Final Fantasy VII cover. So I thought that one was kind of cool to have, too. Again, nice deals on those, but overall the magazines there were a little bit unimpressive. And then the last magazine I got, I found at one of the stores in Portland. I vaguely remember this magazine. Maybe if there's any viewers that know more about it, you can help me out. But this is Silicon Magazine, and this is just like really a pamphlet. It's mostly advertising. Covered a lot of niche games, but it actually says in the notes that it was published in St. Louis, but I looked at all the names on there, like I don't know any of the people that did this. I think it was maybe given away for free at some retailers, because I wanted to say like I might have had some of these back in the day, but I don't know what, I probably just read them and threw them away because they were so thin. But I thought it was interesting, and it looks like there's quite a few of these that existed. So this one's for Carrier on Dreamcast, kind of that late 90s, early 2000s eras, I think, when this magazine existed. So that about does it. But very good month. Like I said, a nice variety of stuff that I got. The con was a good time. Portland was a good time, as always. And really enjoyed, having some free time to look around the city and eat and dine and shop and all the other cool things that there are to do there as well. Plus, the weather was excellent. So we'll see how it goes in November. I don't think it's going to be as busy travel-wise as October was. But thank you for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. And I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.